So I'm Cesar, and here I'm interviewing Jeff. He's my trumpet teacher. Been a student since 2020, I believe. Around, no,
Yeah.
maybe earlier.
Yeah, maybe before that.
Yeah, I think before. It was when I got braces, so it was actually 2017 when I started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I didn't realize it'd been that long. That's cool.
yeah, it's been a while. It's just I know we had a period where like I stopped doing lessons, but glad to be back with you and still seeing results. It goes to show
Yeah.
like teachings of Claude Gordon's really they are day after day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
and I'm excited that like things have picked up with you with gigs and all the different things you're doing. So that's cool.
Yeah, of course. So tell us about yourself. Like what got you into music and why did you stay with music after, because you know there's a lot of music that has no money. It's a hard thing. Like what made you stay?
Okay, so when of course like when I first got excited about trumpet and music, I wasn't thinking about making money or anything like that. I just thought it was really cool because I heard Doc Severinsen play on TV when I was in first grade, and I don't know what I was doing being up that late at night, but I remember thinking that was so cool. I wanted to do that, and my parents were like, "No, we are not going to do music because we had to spank your sisters to get them to practice, and it's just not worth doing that." And I was like, "Please, please, please." And they just kept saying no. It was sad. So 2 years later, when I was in third grade, I was going to a friend's birthday party, and I'd grown up in Bakersfield, California, which is maybe about 100 miles north of Los Angeles. And he was having his birthday party at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which is like an amusement park. And what was weird is on the way in the car, I heard this song, um, Saturday in the Park by Chicago. And they played it a couple times on the radio, played it several times when I was walking around the amusement park. And then I heard it on the radio again, and I was like, I want a trumpet. And that was third grade. So I just would not stop begging my parents till I got a trumpet in fourth grade and started in public school. And it was super frustrating at the beginning because I literally could not make a sound come out of the trumpet. And after all this time begging for a trumpet, my two sisters and my mom and dad picked up this rental trumpet and they made a sound, and they're like, "Why can't you make a sound out of it? I guess we should just return it." And I was like about ready to cry. I was like, "No, no, no." And I just like struggled through playing and somehow started with band and it started working. And but a lot of these things change when I started practicing more, like around the beginning of high school, and I really started thinking about music, maybe as a career or something. And I was getting worse, and I didn't realize that there were things in my playing that were holding me back and they were messed up and I had to fix. And that's where I met up with Claude Gordon. And then through Claude Gordon, I met a lot of his students and other musicians that I played gigs with. And I started thinking, wow, I could actually make a living at doing music and trumpet. But nobody really told me how to do it. Like in college, I mean, I have a college degree, but it was more like I'd just ask questions and talk with people. And I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. But I went through a period of time where it was like, maybe I'm not cut out to do this as a career or whatever. And it was really two of my Claude Gordon friends. They both studied with him. One took me to lunch, and the other one took me to breakfast. And basically, were saying, you'd done the teaching class, and it doesn't matter if you do it as a career or not. You're good at it and you enjoy it, so don't stop doing it, and just get better and just figure out what's supposed to happen next. And I remember when they said that, I was like, yeah, okay. So I I it was just a temporary kind of questioning of that, but I kind of feel like all of us have things that we're skilled at, whether it's like perceiving people and students and how they feel things, and other people might be better at managing people or standing up giving a lecture in a class or something like that. But I kind of figure that you figure out what you're good at, what you like. And for me, it's been teaching primarily over playing, even though I love to play and I love to practice. But my motivation for doing those things is so that I can teach. So it's kind of like I love every bit of what I do. It's cool.
Yeah, it's a good combination because you're combining multiple skills and making a living out of it. And I find that interesting that you say like it was hard and you could have easily just been like, what, this isn't for me, but you decided, to keep at it.
There are a group of people that were discouraging when I started. I mean, I can like think of all of them. Like, I was like in the honors level classes in high school, and I mean, I wasn't a straight A student, but I was put on an academic decathlon and some other things, maybe because I was quick at certain things or understood things, but I was like maybe like a C plus student. I was not a student. But when we were doing some of this stuff, the guy who was over the whole thing said, "Oh, why are you going to waste your time doing music?" And I was like, "Oh, what are you telling me what I should do with that? I want to do it." And then even my mom and my parents had I was adopted, so my two parents had actually grown up and gone through the Great Depression, so they
Oh,
were very like miserly with money. It was like my dad was super tight with money, and we never. So when we were talking about some of this stuff, it was he passed away my freshman year of high school, and then my mom was like, "Okay, you're going to college, but you're going to go get a teaching degree so you can teach and become a band director." And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to go to college and learn things, but I knew kind of what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play the trumpet and teach private lessons because I'd seen Claude Gordon do it and seen how it was kind of cool that he could help people improve, and I really wanted to do that. And my this is a long, confusing story, but my sister, through adoption, it, she was the only other person in my family that was really encouraging. She was a singer, had sang with Bob Hope, and I think some stuff with Metropolitan Opera, and she taught voice lessons and had like kind of like mentored under a guy named Seth Riggs, who's a really well-known vocal teacher in California, still alive. He's about in his 90s, I think. I saw her teach lessons. One of her students was Linda Carter, who later became like Wonder Woman. And I was probably maybe first grade, and I just remember looking at this thinking, man, that's, I mean, I thought they were both pretty, but hearing Linda Carter improve and seeing what was going on with the lessons, I was just really intrigued by it. And then I saw her like teach Linda Carter over several years, and I don't know, maybe like 5 years, 7 years, something. And I just thought that was like pretty neat. I heard improvements and noticed that my sister did that. So anyway, that was something that kind of motivated me too, you know?
yeah, I can relate to that because I've done something similar. Well, first I saw like the improvements from taking lessons with you, right? And it's like, wow, like I can actually progress. I can actually do things because that's for me, my inspiration was mainly Rafael Mendes because I heard his playing and I looked through all like to see what I can learn from him, but there was really not that much. It was like, all
Yeah.
right, I was kind of lost. Like, what do I do to progress, right? And that's whenever I started finding like your website, seeing stuff about Claude Gordon. Now we're reading like this stuff makes sense because like all
Yeah.
the good players, I also went through like finding the right mouthpiece, like
Yeah.
finding in the right trumpet, like all of the stuff that people buy to skip practicing.
Yeah. So did I don't know if you I remember you mentioned Mendez several times. Do you have all of his albums?
I have, yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I bought all of them. And I had seen that he was a mariachi, but I had never found recordings until lately. And that's
Yeah.
made him into a playlist. So I was like, that's pretty cool. I think more
Yeah,
mariachis.
that is very cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll tell you the way I found out about Rafael Mendez. He was another person like it was all around like maybe my freshman year in high school. It's like I was just looking for anything that was trumpet. I'd heard
yeah,
Maynard Ferguson play at Disneyland. I heard Dizzy Gillespie also there. Several other big bands like Louis Bellson and Toshiko Akiyoshi and like just some really cool things. And then uh, I would do searches like in the library. I mean, because the internet didn't exist at that time. So I'd go to the library and like
yeah,
search through magazines or search through whatever to find anything on trumpet. And my high school library had one album of Rafael Mendes, and I was like, wow, I have a record player. So I checked it out, and I probably kept that record like a year or something, like overdue or something, because I just kept playing it all the time. But I mean, then later when I got to college, I ended up finding a couple more of his records, and then probably what you got was when they did like the 12 CDs or something like that. And I
yeah.
remember when as soon as that came out, I was like, oh wow, I want to get all of that, because he's so good. But that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's the recordings are really clean. Like you can hear all his double tonguing, his effortless playing. And that's where I wanted to get at too. And that's, when I started looking on how to do that, and I just couldn't find answers as well. And that's when I started finding your website, Claude Gordon. I was like, this stuff makes sense. It's actually telling you like how you can develop the skill to do it instead of
Right.
trying to find gadgets. And then that's when I started trying. I bought your book, Hit It Hard and Wish It Well.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, that's when I started trying it. And that's when I was also told I had to get braces. So I was like, if I'm gonna restart, gotta restart right. And so that's when I
Yeah.
contacted you.
Yeah. I'm glad you made it through all that. Sometimes the braces frustrate people, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to. Like it didn't really like ruin you or anything. It's just you had to get adjusted a little bit. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like if you were just doing an embouchure change.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, some people get scared of that. But you don't have to. You made me think of something though, where you're talking about all these different things that people try and knowing how to do it. It's like I'm almost done with a project here in my studio. I was going to make a short video once it's all done, where I'm basically reorganizing my whole file cabinet with a color coded system with if this type of book is in this column and if it's this color, it is like a etude book or a flexibility book or a whatever. And as I'm basically reviewing every single book that's there, I mean, it's solos, etudes, everything. I'm thinking what what gets missed so often is like people go to college or they'll study with someone who's a great player is they're getting like one little piece of information instead of how it works and how to fit it all together. So, I mean, sometimes people get the wrong idea with Claude Gordon thinking it's all about his books, but like, we don't use that many books by Claude Gordon in the practice routine. It's like we're using lots of other things because I mean his books were just meant to kind of fill in what's sort of missing in some other books. But that's why I think like just the value of some of these awesome books, like there's one that we'll eventually get through like Claudemir, and then there's some other books by Maxime Alphonse. So like some of these French books, it's like they take a while to get through and but you benefit so much from that more than like buying a mouthpiece or whatever else.
Oh yeah. Regarding mouthpieces, I automatically think of Perduva double cup mouthpieces because probably around the year when I was into trumpet playing and learning mariachi. I had just begun learning mariachi. I was told, you have thick lips, get a double cup mouthpiece. It's gonna help you with playing. And I didn't know anything, so I was like, okay, I'll do it. Like he plays trumpet, so he knows what he's talking about. And I went ahead and bought that immediately. Like I was extremely sharp. I got in trouble in school. The teacher literally pulled me out. He's like you're out of tune now. Like you never played like this. Like what's happening? I was just like, well, I have this. This is the only thing that changed about this mouthpiece.
Yeah,
And she was like mad at me, like why did you buy it? And I'm like, well, I was told mariachi trumpet players play on this. She's like, well, I
that's
know
funny.
plenty. Yeah, I was like so scared because she got me really mad. Like when she got mad,
That's
everyone
funny.
would be scared.
I had
And
a, I had a, well, before I got sensible with Claude Gordon, I bought a bunch of mouthpieces and I had a Purdue Cup 5, I think. I think that was the number,
I
like a
had one of
star.
those. Yeah,
And because someone told me, like, oh, Harry James played one of these. And I was like, ooh, maybe I'll sound like him if I played that. That'd be cool. But it didn't make me
yeah.
sound like that. The craziest thing I played on before Claude Gordon was Maynard Ferguson jet tone. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
I had a C trumpet and I was playing that on a C trumpet in our high school orchestra. And I remember the director like gave me a really weird look like like I must have sounded terrible. And I think he was like wondering, what did you do? It sounds awful.
Yeah.
But I thought
Similar to me, like the teacher she was really mad, like, cause I was really sharp, and
that's funny.
like, well, it's supposed to help me play higher, but I quickly found out that's like they don't
Oh,
really,
I know. Yeah.
yeah.
But some
Like you said,
people,
like you try, you think you're gonna sound like Harry James or something like that, but it doesn't work. I found that my range did go up. My range at best with the mouthpiece that I used was like a G. It was not very high, right? And then with that one, I could finally play a high C, and I was like, oh wow, look at my range. But then after a month, range was back to normal, and I had
yeah.
lost my lower range. So I was like, oh, this
No,
isn't
you're
helping.
saying when you went back to the like a normal mouthpiece or whatever, or
No, I was told by another trumpet player, oh, it's because that's too big. You have to get another mouthpiece. I was like,
oh
"Ah,
yeah.
okay. And I had a Purdue 5, and then I went to a Purdue 4.
Well, I mean, what do you know? I mean, I had several people that told me conflicting things when I was younger, and I would go to different master classes and clinics and stuff like that, and you're trying to figure it out, and it's just it can be really frustrating, and it's like I know that trumpet players want to get better, but the thing that we're talking about is like if they only knew knowing how to practice would get you there a lot faster than buying a horn or a mouthpiece. And but they want to, it's just like people playing golf or something like that. They think if they go buy like better clubs or better shoes, it's like it probably better to get some lessons, or
Yeah.
slow down and like practice perfecting little details instead of just doing it the same old way, and that's where knowing how to practice is what people need more than anything else. And that's why, teaching is so important.
Quick break from the interview. If you're struggling anything trumpet related, like your double tongue, triple tongue, flexibility, high notes, low notes, endurance, I'm giving free playing consultations since I know there are thousands of trumpet players that are getting better every day, while many still feel stuck after years of playing. So make sure you reach out to me at Cesar@brassbrilliance.com. Just say free playing consultation and we'll book a call. Now back to the interview.
For sure. Because even if you do the math, right? Like every mouthpiece, back then it was like $80. Now it's let minimum like 120, right? Per mouthpiece. And you're trying to find the right mouthpiece. Like how many mouthpieces do you have to buy? Like 5, 10, 15? Well, if you never find one, like how much money are you spending? You might as well have spent it on lessons.
Yeah, 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 because the lessons in the books will really last well, the rest of your life if you take good care of them. Like I tell, um, I mean, out of all the stuff that I own, I mean, I have some nice trumpets and everything. Seriously, my books are probably the most valuable thing that I have. So if something were happening, like a house is on fire, I would grab my books more than I'd probably grab my trumpet because I can go buy a new trumpet and whatever. But the books have the experience and the knowledge and wisdom and then that got me where I am. It's so important.
Yeah, I can see that because I've actually also looked out for like Rafael Mendes solos or Claude Gordon music, and well, the Rafael Mendes has like a book, so there's a bunch of solos of his. But the one that I couldn't find much music was from Claude Gordon, and it's like I would trade, like you said, like a trumpet to actually have the music to be able to play a Claude Gordon solo or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the YouTube videos I put were like little videos of him playing a solo where it's got like the written part and stuff
Yeah.
on the page. The pages on my website for each of those songs, I've actually got the images of the original part. Um, They are in a library, I think, at the University of Illinois, but to
Okay.
my knowledge, they aren't really on display to where people can go see them. They're like stored away in some boxes and stuff, but and they do exist, but I don't know if the whole big band arrangements are in there or not. But I mean, that's why some of this stuff I think is easier to put or more useful to put online because who is
Yeah.
going to take a plane flight and go to Illinois to look through a library for Claude Gordon stuff? It's like maybe that would happen once every 10 years or something, not very often.
Especially since I think Claude Gordon isn't really well known as he used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I try to stress with people is more people know about Herbert L. Clark, but
Yeah.
there's misinformation about Herbert L. Clark, and they try to say, "Oh, this book is about flow studies and blah 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 blah," and it's like, no, if you read the other three books, you'd see here's how it all fits together, and then if you looked at what Claude Gordon wrote, you'd see he was a student of Herbert L. Clark, so wouldn't he know what Herbert L. Clark taught because he took from him for 10 years? So it's like that's where I think like when people are looking for information on Herbert L. Clark, it's like Claude Gordon would be the best
Yeah.
place to look. And that's where I try to like explain that. So it's where it's like the value of knowing how to use the book. So but yeah.
I agree with that because Claude Gordon was the one that systemized it and essentially made it understandable for everyone to follow through. And it's
Yeah.
kind of it's cool. It's kind of cool to think about it because it's as if we were learning from Clark himself through first yourself and then Claude Gordon and then reaching, what Clark knew.
Yeah. And I mean, if you read some of like the biography of Herbert L. Clark, the How I Became a Cornetist book. I have that up
Yeah.
on my site and we can look at. I mean, he like tried to be really kind of scientific and analytical. He'd go every place he'd tour around, he'd take lessons and he'd like write down his thoughts about things and test things on himself and say, this doesn't work or this seems to work. And that's where he did that, and Claude Gordon sort of did that, and but got all messed up, and until he got lessons with Clark and kind of got straightened out. But it's like that way of being analytical and systematic is so important. But it's like, why do we need to waste the time on doing that when someone like them has already done it before? And already like figured these things don't work or this works better than that. And then we can understand kind of how to take it the next step further. So that's kind of what I think is important about that.
That actually brings up a good question. Like, what would you say is the next step to progress what Claude Gordon and Clark have done?
I look at it as my thing is just teaching private lessons, but I've got some students that have done some cool things. Like, for example, um, I don't know if I know I've used a little bit of it, but David Birdie, he's a student
Yeah.
from England, and some of the material that we've gone through, he's said, "Oh, we should take this and like write it out and present it in a book." And he like constructed a book from the lessons that we were doing. But I kind of feel like if like my thing is teaching, but I kind of feel like if I could inspire students to do different new things to apply the ideas in a different way. Like he did this one book that kind of complements St. Jacome, or another book that kind of expands and organizes the Aaron Harris Advanced Studies book, or another one that what he did is took several of the flexibility books we used and tried to lay them out in a and show how to be systematic with the flexibility. Well, I mean, it's like there, to my knowledge, there's not really been any books that really are like what he was doing on that. And I think that's what I think is pretty cool. So if you can, and I think the goal with actually with all of them is also to show people how to think when they're practicing, so that they're not just saying here's some stuff to play, but how to do it, and that's so I think that that kind of thing someone could go further. I mean, my goal with my whole website is to try to make it to where more people will want to come to it and look through it. And I mean, I have some things planned to make it better to find things or easier to find them. But because my goal with that is that it would be kind of a library in the future that people could keep coming back to and maybe have a way to discuss certain topics and but present it in a really focused way, because I think some websites on trumpet things on the internet where people debate things, they'll go back and forth and they kind of get off on a
Yeah.
tangent instead of like, here's the topic and the question. Let's like stay right on that. Well, I think it's this. No, I think it's that. And then by the end of it, you could see and understand why people think a certain way about playing. That's kind of, I mean, that's the kind of thing where I think that like within the Claude Gordon books, there wasn't really, he didn't, I mean, the internet didn't exist at that time, but there wasn't a way to present like this long series of question and answer stuff. It's it was more like getting you to use the material and work through it because that's going to give
Um,
you more benefit.
So you're saying like kind of change the presentation of the information and also
Yeah,
be able to like discuss about it so we can get more conclusions from it.
right.
Something that I was thinking on asking you is how would you say you can practice improv and transposition of a solo?
So you saying transposition like playing orchestral music or
No, I
so
mean not
just
transcribing, I meant to say.
oh, okay, okay. Okay, so with improv, I mean, I didn't come up with this, but I'd gone to a lot of different workshops on improv because I felt like from studying with Claude Gordon and when I was in college, I felt I had the skill to play accurately and play my high notes easily and play lead trumpet, but and I could sight read. So the thing that would always intimidate me was the second trumpet part and playing changes. And because I would see other people next to me that maybe I had more skill than them, that they would play a solo and it sounded really hip. And I was like, man, I sound just square. I sound like I'm just playing scales and arpeggios. It's like, why can't I do that? And I couldn't understand it. So all these I went to all these different master classes, took a couple different. classes in college for jazz arranging and improv, and but nothing really got me to where I felt like I understood how to do what I wanted to do. Well, so there's a friend of mine, his name is Rich Hoffman. He was a Claude Gordon student. I think he's still teaching at California State University, Northridge. He was kind of like a big brother to me, and we'd done the pedagogy class with Claude Gordon, and he was like 6 years older. And when I was at college, he hooked me up with some of my first gigs and also referred me to a couple different stores for my first private lessons when I first started teaching. Well, we were talking and he said, "Hey, I'm taking I'm taking improv lessons with a guy named Charlie Shoemake, who's like a vibraphone player that I think was living in Santa Barbara. So he'd drive like, I don't know, an hour and a half or so to maybe longer to get from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara. And he'd do this, I think, once a week or every 2 weeks or something. And he'd taken lessons with him for a couple years, I think. And so Rich said, "Hey, I'll make you a deal if you come over to my house and help me tear down my fence and rebuild a new fence. I'll teach you some lessons on what I covered and give you all the assignments." So I was like, "Okay, cool." So that was easy. We did that one day and then met a few months, like probably 3 or 4 months. And you give me an assignment and come back a couple weeks later and we do a little bit more and do the next thing. But so here's the parts that it was more practical, I think, than anything I'd ever done, and it really worked. So we'd have what we call like theory that you do in the first part of the routine. And it'd be like scales and arpeggios. So you might say like play all of your major scales and then go for the arpeggios, say arpeggiate all the different chords that are in that scale. So you might go like C major, go like C, E, G, B natural, D minor 7, D, F, A, C natural, E minor 7, E, G, B, D natural, F major 7, F, A, C, E, G dominant 7, G, B, D, F, A minor 7, A, C, E, G, B minor 7 flat 5, B, D, F, A. And then do that in all 12 keys. But that'd be your theory. And you also do it on your trumpet, like, and do that so that you can like do it on your horn. And then you'd have a solo. So you might take um like I remember one of the first ones we did was a song called Damaronia by Fats Navarro. And Fats Navarro was someone that Clifford Brown kind of looked up to. And when you hear Fats Navarro, you can kind of hear why Clifford Brown is kind of similar, you know? So we take a tune, memorize the melody, memorize the chord changes, and the then you'd also have an improv solo. And you'd memorize the chord changes and the inflections, every little detail of how that's done. And then the next part was what I never done before. He put little quotation marks on maybe like three spots in the improv solo, and you would play like this lick, maybe a two major lick, and then you play it in all 12 keys. Well, with doing all the Claude Gordon stuff, I can easily like play this, transpose up a half step, another half step, and a half step. So going up by half steps or down by half steps is something that's almost not thinking. So I knew I needed to I would do something different. So I put it when I'm going around the circle of fifths. So it would like make me further away from the previous key. And then, but what made it unique was when we were playing the lick, I wouldn't just play the notes. I'd be thinking the chord tones. So say if I was playing a the lick was like over a D minor 7, like DFAC. I wouldn't think DFAC. I'd think 1 3 5 7. And then if the
Oh,
next chord was like a dominant 7, like a G7, GBDF, and say if I went B, G, F, D, I'd think 1 or 3 1 7 5. So basically, with every one of those little short licks, I play in every key, thinking the chord tones, And then the next day, I'd have another one to do it on. Then the third day, another one. And then I think the fourth day would be back to the first one. Doing this for about 2 weeks, it started being like, if I was, oh, and then the final stage was, or after you do that each day, you put on an accompaniment recording and you would play the melody, the improv solo, and then you take your own solo over those changes. And you'd know the changes in your head. And you didn't mean that you had to play piano, but you should be able to sit at the piano and play each of those chord changes at whatever speed. So, like here's a D7, whatever chord it is, so that you can work it through in your brain. And then by doing that with one tune for a couple weeks, then you move on to another tune. And it was, for me, it was probably the second or third tune. I remember thinking, what did I just do? That was weird. I just played a lick from this other tune here in a totally different key, and it just like came out. So for me, that was how the improv stuff worked. But I think I'm so slow at picking up on it. I needed something that was that methodical, because some people, they just pick their horn up and they don't even think that much about it. They just kind of like are feeling their way through it. And I need to be able to know what I'm doing a little bit more, because, you know, just the way I am.
I have a friend who plays the accordion, so he understands all the chords, right? And he'll pick up the trumpet and he'll like improv. Most of the time, he sounds really good, and he
Yeah.
tells me like, "You should try it." I'm like, I'm not as skilled with improv. Like, I can play technical stuff in like mariachi. I can play, the higher parts or the lower parts. I can do anything regarding that. But you ask me to improv, it's like it's a bit harder to fit it in.
I'll tell you one of the things. I mean, just like if I were to redo something when I was younger, a lot of it is you have to take the risk of sounding bad, because if you get intimidated and with anything, but if you start thinking, "Oh no, I'm going to make a fool of myself and I'll sound stupid," I don't want to do it. Let someone else do it. I did that, and I think that slowed me down. Where maybe if I would have messed up more and been like, okay, well, I would have gotten to the next stage of development sooner, instead of thinking like, oh, I need to be afraid of messing up. And so I think that's like, with a lot of things, that's going for it and not feeling like the things are over if you mess up or it doesn't come out the way you want.
Yeah, that's true. Because you could be learning it and you're not gonna even test it out if you don't even try it, right?
Right. And then the more you do it, you start figuring out like what works for you. Like, for example, the way I was just explaining about doing improv, I have plans to do an interview with another one of my Claude Gordon student friends. Um, his name is Ron Meza, and he he knows about this way that I was just telling you, with the breaking down the licks and all that. And he stayed with Claude Gordon. He was like we know, like he is not as serious about the trumpet right now, but in a short period of time, he could get through some of his basic Claude Gordon routines and get himself up to where he's playing like lead trumpet. And he's done it for like some shows. So he went from like just kind of like dabbling with it to like being really solid. But he was like, I know the work involved. And he was like, I don't really want to do this. He's older and he's kind of like retired. And it's like, I don't want to like spend my time doing that. So instead, he wanted to work more on improv. So I was telling him about this, and he was like, "Yeah, I know how some people do that." He keeps a little notebook, and like if he hears something like on the radio or a CD or something on TV and likes a lick or something, he'll actually like write it down in a little notepad. So he keeps a little notepad with him, writes it down. So then he might like sit there, and when there's a commercial break on TV, he'll like take that lick and play it in all 12 keys. And then, so he'll have his horn out, and he was telling me, he was like, yeah, then if I go and I play a jazz tune, it's like I'm actually playing, like it's helping him do more, because it's basically like a ear training exercise application thing, you know? So I would think the more you do that, the better you get at, you know, and that's why, you know, when other musicians say play the piano and or guitar or something like that, it helps you because it makes you more aware of the chords. Because I think for me, after I got past that point, I felt like when I would see the chord changes, I was more aware of what they sounded like in my brain instead of just thinking of it like a math problem on paper. It's like I started hearing it inside my head more, you know. That's always slightly improving all the time too, you know. So like if you did that all the time, like I know some people where they don't, I mean, they can read music, but they'll play gigs where they don't use any music and play like 3 hours or more with, and they have hundreds of tunes that they can just call up and say, this tune in this key, blah, 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 blah. And then they can just do it. Like, I mean, that's like, if you did it all the time, you'd be really good at that, you know?
That actually makes a good point because for mariachi, you have to be similar. It's not like really advanced music. It's simple music, but is you really have to have them memorized. You have like a way where you keep track of all the songs you know, or like to just come and remember, oh, that song has been a while. I got to review it.
You say, do I have a way of keeping track of that?
Yeah, like a system to keep up with all your repertoire.
I mean, I don't know that I have a great. I mean, I played some salsa band things in Los Angeles, and I knew some of it from memory because I'd done them so much. But I mean, my I don't really speak Spanish, so the way I would remember them because I knew my numerals in Spanish is if they called up like the number, you know, like 323, you know, I'd be like, well, that was it like Trescientos Trenta Trace or something, you know, so I'd be like, okay, I know what that is. I can start it, and then I can like be finding it while I'm, you know, to read it. But I'm more of a reader, but so that's kind of my thing. I mean, so if I do something by ear, I can do it, but it's like mentally a lot more tiring for me to do that. Like I have a friend that I play with his band sometimes, and he doesn't use any charts, so it's
Yeah.
like it's like a lot of just mental energy to try to remember the horn lines by ear and play them and play at the right time and not mess up and play it an extra time when you shouldn't. And you know, that's where I like being able to see something on a piece of paper, but you know, you can't always do that.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice when you have it. For example, like when you don't know that group that you're playing with and they have the music and like it's pretty nice. But for like
Yeah.
for the thing I was asking, like mariachi music, you have to know the music. Like, because people don't like it.
Yeah, because it's more like showy and stuff too, you know? So that's
Yeah,
kind of, I mean, I know like talking with a friend of mine, Harry Kim, who did a lot of like rock band things like Phil Collins, all that. I mean, it would look really weird to have music out there on stage because, I mean, that would be distracting. You want to like connect with the audience and move around. And if you're
yeah.
trying to read the music when you're doing that, it won't happen, you know? It'll seem too disconnected from the audience.
I've been working like on a system myself where I'm not sure if you've heard of Airtable, but it's like a database software. And I just make it to where like I just put the songs that I know. And then from there, I include the sheet music because when I'm reviewing it, I can see the music. It's like it's not like people are watching me like, hey, you're reviewing the music with sheet music. So I have the sheet music there. Then I put right down the keys I need to know it in because in our group it's only men, but sometimes women from the audience want to sing, so you have to change the key. And
Right. So their voices can work.
that's why I have it to where it shows the key and then what other keys you should know it in. And then like I have a little check mark where it tells me if I've reviewed that song or not, because otherwise you forget them and people can tell.
Yeah, I remember you remind me, I was in a band where the lead singer had a little tiny notebook with something like that. And he would keep like a
Yeah.
list of songs and keys and notes about different things, like maybe different styles. And that's kind of cool.
That's definitely One of the cooler things that I think that we should start also applying like in music because it's pretty effective. And also there's an app that I saw is called Moses AI. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
No, what does it do?
So you put a song in there and then it automatically shows you like the key it's in and like the tempo and it shows you the chords as well. So you can change the key, the tempo.
So any sound file, so you can take like a pop song and just drop it in there and it it analyzes the chords that quick.
Yeah.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah, that's how I started figuring out some of the music for Rafael Mendes with mariachi. Like I was like, I heard this song, I was like, I want to be able to play it. It sounds cool. But it's like really fast. I was like, how am I gonna figure this out?
Well,
And
and we were talking about like the transcribing and the stuff
yeah,
that I didn't really answer that part of the question, but for example, um, I mean, another thing I do is like when I play like some of the Sauce Band stuff, or I've done it with like a Maurice Andre solo that I really wanted I wanted his specific notes in there. So I'd sit down and play the recording. Well, it used to be like a cassette tape and stop it and write down and noodle on my trumpet and play the next thing and write down. The more you do that, you get to where you can remember bigger chunks and pick it up faster, you know?
yeah, because that way you also internalize the music. And I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but you also kind of start as you hear someone else playing, you can imagine how you would be playing it and how it kind of feels as well to have hit those notes. So it's kind of easier to figure out the notes as well. Not just on your ear, but also like based on how you think it would feel to play the notes.
Yeah, like if I'm transcribing something that's trumpet, it is very real to me. It feels like it's like I can feel it in my mouth with like the tongue level and stuff.
Yeah.
Hard to wear. I don't think I have perfect pitch, but it's like I feel what it would be like if I were doing it on the trumpet. I pick my trumpet up and it's like what I was feeling without the trumpet. It's kind of a weird way to describe it. I don't know how that happens, but it feels like I guess you practice enough that it's like you start to hear and feel it and put them together, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's actually the cool part of Claude Gordon's teaching too, because you're aware of, okay, my tongue level works like this, my wind power feels like this, and you start connecting it to the notes. So it's like that's where because you're aware of it, your brain starts associating this note feels like this, it sounds like this, and I know like I'm gonna react like this or whatever. So it's like kind of like a psychological thing.
It's interesting.
So that brings up a question like, how do you choose what book you're gonna go through?
Um, you mean like with the students?
I would say like personally and with a student.
Yeah, well, okay, so like I mean, like having studied for so long that like the routine would have, of course, breathing exercises at the beginning. You would need a book. You'd have flexibility of some sort, which could be one book or several books, and then some scale, arpeggio, finger related things, and then an etude or multiple etudes, and then a range study. So all that like the basic categories like that. So with the flexibility, there'd be a sort of limited choice of books. I'm always trying to like expand them. Like, some of them, we haven't gone through every one of them, but like, like the interval and flexibility stuff at St. Jacome. There's
Yeah.
parts like that in Arbin. Claude Gordon's daily trumpet routines, Walter Smith lip flexibilities, Earl Irons, 27 groups exercises, Del Stagers. We haven't done Schlossberg, but Schlossberg, um, Charles Cullen Advanced Lip Flexibilities. There's another book called 100 Original Warm-Ups. Um, there's a book that I'm using with a few students by a trombone player named Ernst Getke. He's like a German trombone student or trombone player, but we're having to transpose it. There's a book from England called How Brass Players Do It. Um, and Claude Gordon wrote. tongue level studies. It comes later. But there, like, so right there, there's maybe only 12. So what I would usually do is like work through one book and get the student through it. I might go faster or slower depending on the student. I might give less of some of it or more depending on what they can handle, or do different variations on it to make it to where they can spend more time on it. But then we work through books like that. When we reach the end, I might come back and do another book again or jump around in different ways. But there's like that category. Then there's like certain books like that for the finger and technique things and the etudes. So it's like I've got all these different books in my mind, and I know I've gone through them, so I know what they did to me, so I know how to where I'm kind of dreaming where I want to take the student with the book, and then but then I'm always on the lookout to add more books, like especially the flexibility books. So if I thought of another one, Pedro Lozano. He was like a Mexican trombone player that wrote a flexibility book and later was for trumpet. But there's like all these different things. So if I find a book like that, like if I'm in a different town or if I'm looking online, I will purposely look through all the trumpet method books and be like, oh wow, there's a book I haven't seen before, and I might just say I'm going to buy it. And
Hmm.
if someone comes out with a new book, I usually buy it and look through it. Like there's a guy that came out with a book, like kind of in the middle of COVID, and I'd heard about it, and I wanted to see what he thought about things, so I bought it. And I looked at it, I'm thinking, yeah, I like some of the things that are in the book is they're really cool the way it's set up and stuff. But I'm like, I think I could do a lot more with other method books that were only mentioned. Were like, here, go on and do this, where it's like, there's like here's like 10 pages of stuff. But you gotta
Yeah.
know how to use it. So it's like, but by looking at the different people's books, even though I'm like, I think I could do that better, the organization part of it, I could look at it and say, that's an interesting way that was presented. I think I could think of a new idea from what I found in that book. So it's kind of the same way with like anything. It's like you learn something and it causes you to maybe create something that no one has ever done before.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely because presenting it makes a difference. Because whenever we started doing the violin book, I had already bought that book like way before I was your student from another teacher I had. He was more like gonna teach me how to do mariachi style. And he just told me like, oh, well, it looks like you need to work on your fundamentals. Buy this book. And it was like that brown book. I was like, well, what is this about? And it was like, oh, it's flexibility. I'm like, well, I'm not very good at that. Like mariachi, you don't really do slurring in mariachi.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, okay. I'm like, I guess it's something I have to do. But he started on the first exercises. It was like maybe like the first section, and I thought that was so hard. But like I never understood how to practice it and stuff. So I was like, hopefully one day I can play this book. But it seems like it's a really hard book, and who knows until when. But it's not until you showed it to me, it's like, okay, this is the purpose of this exercise. And already having gone through Claude Gordon's teachings, it's like, okay, now this makes sense. It's actually not that bad. It's actually kind of fun. So
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, some of the later parts of it get pretty crazy where they're, like going slurring like 2 octave intervals and like all that kind of stuff. But I mean, but you can also tell like we didn't do that book until we'd done some other books like Collins' Advanced Slip Flexibilities, because that kind of would prepare you to do the other book. So it's like if we just randomly went to a really hard book and then do the easier books and take our time along the way, then the hard stuff would actually mess you up instead of help you. So it's gonna that's something to think about too, because everyone's different. You're trying to figure out, okay, this person should stay a little bit longer on this, and that's where you can't do it like just treat everyone the same exact way because it it's like we're all a little bit different. But I mean, it works the same for everyone, but the rate that we learn and click with things is totally different, even for different skills. So it's like
Yeah.
you, it's you just have to see where you are and where you can get to, you know?
Actually, yeah, that's a really good point too, because I've heard, well, I've told other people that, and not necessarily trumpet players, whenever we do discuss trumpet, they're like, oh, well, I see this trumpet player uses this mouthpiece, and they're like, why? Or they have their embouchure all the way to the side, and why? And I was just telling them, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter if they make a phase or where they're playing, what mouthpiece, what trumpet. What matters is the seven fundamentals. Like, that doesn't change. And then they look at me like, you're the kind of guy who is just close-minded and doesn't like think that everyone has is different. And I was like, no, no, that's not the point I'm saying like because there are these seven fundamentals that never change and makes everything else be able to change. You know, like I see it like a boxer. Like some people are southpaw, some of them, are more are I don't know, I forgot what the word is for that, but there's different ways to have your stance. But what doesn't change is you have to work on your footwork. Because otherwise, like you're gonna be a bad boxer. And
Yeah.
some people might punch a certain way, but what doesn't change is that you have to, rep it out and have something that's similar so you don't injure yourself. That those things don't change, but the other stuff does. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something I think is important to understand with trumpet playing.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, it's similar to also my I mentioned my daughter is wanting to be a professional ballerina and she's doing really well and out in Pacific Northwest Ballet right now out in Seattle. But they like all along when she started out, I think she was 4, she's now 19, and there was the emphasis was on doing the techniques correctly and also conditioning. And as she's gone on, it's like that same emphasis is still there. And that's why you'll be able to last longer because if your technique's messed up or your body's not conditioned, you get an injury and then you're completely out and you can't continue. Now, we don't get injured like that playing the trumpet, like tearing a tendon or an ACL. That won't happen. But it's like people get themselves messed up to where they can't play. But if they kept the focus on the technique of it so that it's going to work well, then it's like that's taken care of. Then they can just go play the music. And that's, I think, more so for trumpet and brass playing than other instruments. Because, of course, everyone else should practice. But if a piano player didn't practice for 3 months, they're going to sound way better than a trumpet player that didn't play for 3 months.
oh yeah.
It's like there's like no comparison because we're the ones making the sound. So if you don't do it for a certain period of time, it starts going away.
I just have a few questions. And one of them is actually something that I don't really see people talking about too much, but it's something that I saw Claude Gordon mention, and it's regarding health. Because I saw he says that to play the trumpet, it's like being an athlete. And so he recommends, taking your health seriously, working out. Would you say like how important is that, or what are aspects that people need to focus in more?
I mean, of course, that's good. I'm one to talk. I mean, I need to get back to like working out and losing weight and getting stronger and cardio stuff and all that. I mean, I've done that really intensely in the past, and I really think that it helps trumpet playing. However, it's not taken the place of practicing. Like I knew a guy that had ran marathons. When I first met him, I thought, wow, he's probably like really going to be powerful. He wasn't. He was weak at playing the trumpet. Where I've seen some people that are like massively or obese, like over 400 pounds, and they play really pretty incredibly strong. But if you tried to walk down the street with them, they'd be really out of breath and something, you know. So it's like playing the trumpet is physical, and everything we do to help that out is great, you know. And you don't, of course, you're when you're in better physical shape, everything else is going to work easier, and I think it also helps your mind to be more sharp, you know,
Yeah.
because whatever endorphins or whatever that happens from exercising and stuff makes you more alert. Like I know, I mean, I don't sleep very much anyway, probably sleep like about 5 hours a night. But when I was intensely working out in the past, it's like I felt like I didn't even need to sleep that much. You know, it
Wow.
was, I just, I don't know. It's like I felt like I would sleep more intensely and wake up like more rested. It was kind of weird, you know. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I know that being being healthy is important to playing the trumpet too, you know, because it's we have to be able to breathe and blow and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, and that actually brings up the point. Like, it reminds me of Rafael Mendes, who had asthma, and like that's why he stopped playing. And for me, I have a autoimmune condition, and thankfully it doesn't show up in like in my playing. It's more like acne, so it's nothing too severe, but it's kind of annoying, right? So like I've been doing research on like how can I help that, and one of the things that pops up is vitamin D. And as you start learning about vitamin D, you also learn about asthma, which you might not have asthma now, but if you're deficient in vitamin D, you could get asthma.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's like it's very important to get your sunlight, reduce all risk of getting asthma because it would be like the saddest thing for a trumpet player, right? Like you need to have good breath control, but now I can't breathe because I have asthma. And that's
Yeah.
precisely what happened to Rafael Mendes.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's
I think this is a good point to call it off. So where can people find you?
okay. Well, my website is my last name, Purtle, P
Mhm.
is in Paul, URTLE.com. I tell people it's just like the animal turtle, but with a P in front instead of a
Yeah.
T. And that's got a bunch of information about me. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram and X and LinkedIn and but my website's where I put all my information where people I think I try to put the most there and I hope that people want to look around there and see all the information about why this stuff matters.
Yeah, for sure. And I know on your website they can also find all the Claude Gordon lectures. So it's like being able to see how Claude Gordon was like and getting like direct transmission from him.
Yeah, definitely. And the way that's set up is you can listen to all of them with a free account, but then on the homepage, there's a little section that says editor's picks, and you can listen to those even without an account. There's like a maximum of four on there, but I did that because I want people to actually keep coming back to the website and not just copy it to their own computer or whatever, but where they have to come back and look around and see what else is on there because there's so much information there. I think there's over 200 hours of audio of Claude Gordon in the camps and other things like that. So it would take a really long time to get through all of it. So I hope people just it might get them to look at something else too, you know.
Guys, if you got value out of that, let me know who else you want me to interview in the comments. Stay sharp and keep improving.